Hey, what's up, guys? Sam here, and I'll be doing the free video for March 11th, 2022. So, just finished recording the premium video for the fine folks in the gold room, and we did what we typically do on a Friday, and we took a quick trip around the world. Maybe not so much around the world, but at least the United States. Looked at the indices, looked at VIX, looked at bonds, try to put all the pieces together to make sense of things as we go into next week. Be aware, next week is Quad Witch plus Fed, so they're stacking the volatility on top of volatility. It could go either way, but the charts are certainly leaning us in one direction. So I do want to show you what I'm looking at here. I'm going to show you SPY with a little bit of concentration, just with the understanding between us that if SPY does this, chances are your stock will also do what SPY does, right? So we don't have to look at every stock in the world. We could just follow the indices, and typically, most stocks at least, will follow the index. So here on SPY, a couple things. One, you did close below last week's low, right, which is usually not a great thing, and you did so on decent weekly volume. The signals on the weekly chart are all still completely pointing south. You have a squeeze that is really ripe to burst lower because you have four now sequential bars lower, and it still technically isn't a low compression squeeze. And you can see that your trend formation, which was perfect before, right? Green above red the whole time, just this beautiful interplay, comes down, gives the red a kiss, bounces, holds above, and then it finally broke right about here, right? And now the trend is not as good as it was, right? So if then you look down here and you're like, well, I've got my first sell signals, like the quad sell signal there, for the first time since COVID started, and you don't have yet a buy signal to cancel it out, right? So that kind of lays the foundation for the trade as the weekly setup. If you look at it on the daily chart, I mean, this is showing trend properties for a while now, right? You can see that if you trace in the 21, it's showing nothing but downtrend. You have a clear downtrend on the trend oscillator as well as on a 195-minute chart. Same idea. So at least for going into next week, and of course, there's a lot of volatility coming next week, and you can get any news on Sunday, right? Whether it's good news or bad news, right? So that's going to drive the chart. But at least as it sits right now, not much has changed. If anything, it's actually only gotten worse from last week, considering the technicals on the chart. So I want to give you two levels here because I did run symmetry, and the symmetry here has played out very nicely, or at least has aligned nicely. It actually hasn't played out yet. The first level of symmetry is going to be on SPY, and that comes in at 399, right? So that comes from the symmetry from here to there, right? So you kind of make a little lightning bolt. That's your first target, 399. Below that, and this one's the one that I think you should keep in your back pocket, 340. There's a lot that lines up there. If I zoom out on the daily chart, you're going to see this big red line here. 340 was the COVID high, right? This was pre-COVID, and then the world changed right there. So that high gets extended across, and then you zoom in on it, and you can see that there's a couple things going on there. So number one, the horizontal red line is the COVID highs, right? This line right here. The rising red line is the weekly 200 right there. And then symmetry, 200% symmetry in this case, of the recent highs is right there. So anytime that you have confluence of both previous high, moving average, and Fibonacci, that hits every school of trader that there is, right? If you don't follow moving averages, you follow structure. If you don't follow structure, you follow Fibonacci. If you don't follow Fibonacci, you follow moving averages, right? And every school would end up with the 340 level. So it's pretty important. So I do think that we get back there. I think you can start setting up some butterflies down there. I don't think that's too crazy. I'm going to be looking at doing ratio spreads down there, selling 340 puts to finance like 360, 370 puts, right? With the idea that you can use a disproportionate amount of puts sold at the 340 strike to then finance the 370 strike. So basically, let's say you buy one and sell three, right? If you have a larger account, you can do that. If you don't have a larger account, just slap protection on the other end, turn it into an unbalanced butterfly, and it still works the same way. So that colors my view of things very heavily going into next week. We close below the low. We have a 195-minute squeeze. We have a confirmed downtrend, and we have active sell signals. In terms of two trades that I like here that are not too related to the index, right? Because, if you're trading Amazon or, well, Amazon's not a good choice. Let's say you're trading Apple or, let me think of another non-tech major stock. I'll just say Tesla, even though it's a major tech stock. Let's say you're trading Apple or Tesla. Those are really just going to follow the indexes, right? So I'm going to show you two trades that could buck the trend here of the indices. One I actually showed you last week. It's inching along, and I think it's really only improved since I last showed it to you. So I'm going to show it to you again, and then I'll show you one new idea. So the idea here is actually UNG. Now, if you excuse me, I'm going to actually show it to you on NG, and just understand UNG is the tradable way to trade this, but this is just the better way to look at it, is with NG, which is the nat gas futures. Now, with the nat gas futures, you have this very nice combination of buy signals canceling out your sell signals from back here, and you have your squeeze rounding out, right? And you have stacked moving averages, right? The 4-hour, which got me into the trade again yesterday, you can see the 4-hour 200 there acting as a very nice level of support because it's trend. And now you have a fresh daily squeeze here. So on net gas, I'm looking for it to get and hold finally above $5 with an ultimate target above 6. So I'm looking for about 6. I'm basically looking for a retest of the highs on net gas here. So the trade on UNG, I went with the 15s for April again yesterday, but I really think that the maybe the better trade given the IV is something like the 17s for July. Right, go out of the money, take advantage of what I believe to be low IV, and give it enough time, and the setup should kind of work its way there. The other trade is CCJ. Now this one I think is a little bit more straightforward because it's more ready to go immediately. UNG, I think it's going to need to gyrate for a little bit, make up its mind, decide what time it wants to get there, but once it goes, it's going to go. CCJ looks a little bit more imminent to me. You have this kind of the slingshot setup with a double buy signal here. And the last time you got a buy signal was pretty good. So this time you got two buy signals, so probably better. And I'm looking for 40 on this. So this is uranium. And I do think that you can take off the top there. You have very high volume this week, right? And the pattern is really improving. So once you take out 28.5, which is the previous highs, obviously 30 is going to be a big level, but I think this is going to get to $40. So three ideas. One, SPY is the the focus, right? Focus on the index so that you could have an understanding of what the stocks are going to do. And then two, if you don't love the index, which I personally don't, but we'll see how it opens on Sunday. Then try to find things that are tangential, right? You can either get short the index if that's your thing, or if you want to trade long, find things that really don't require the index. Like UNG doesn't require the index. CCJ, it gets help from the index, but it doesn't really require it. So a couple of ideas for you guys. Hopefully this was helpful. Keep in mind Quad Witch is next week, plus Fed, plus it's 2022, so it's crazy no matter what. So trade accordingly. Have a plan. Make sure you do your homework this weekend. And we'll catch up next Friday and see how it all went. All right, guys. Have a great weekend. See you next time. Cheers.
Without simpler trading, I could not have financial independence.
This is one of the best investments I ever made in my life.
It's helping me find consistency.
It's one of the things that won me